Hello and welcome to another episode of Fully Charged News. Well, there's so much news I can't even breathe. Now, obviously, the big story this week has been the Tesla Cybertruck, the unveiling of this really quite extraordinary. I just can't even talk about the design of it. I'm not going to talk about that at the moment. I'm going to just talk about very quickly the specs, because they are interesting and obviously impressive. It's Tesla, it was what you expect. There is a single motor version, rear wheel drive, 250-mile range. That's the base version, and that they are announcing that at $39,000, which is cheaper than a Model 3. It's not very much. For the size of the vehicle and the power of the vehicle, it can tow 7,500 pounds. There is a dual motor version, four-wheel drive, that has a range of 300 miles. And that can tow 10,000 pounds. And then at the top of the range, there is the tri-motor version. And I'm assuming that is a single motor driving the front wheels, two motors driving the rear wheels, a 500-mile range. This is what they're saying. A 0 to 60 time of under 3 seconds. And a cost of under $70,000. So that one can tow 14,000 pounds. Which is this many kilograms. I mean, they're all capable of towing large amounts, so they can do towing. So when people say, I need an electric car, but it's got to be able to tow, you'll be able to get one. But you will look quite unusual on a British highway. The deliveries aren't until 2021. I wouldn't think we'll get them in this country or in Europe till 2022. I've decided to take a Corbyn stance. Now, for those of you outside the UK, you may not know what that is. Jeremy Corbyn, who is the current leader of the opposition in the United Kingdom, the Labour leader, has declared that he is neutral about the B word, about Brexit. He's not on either side. Quite an interesting stance to take, because we have a lot of politicians who are totally opposed to Brexit. We have a lot of politicians who are totally for it. It's split the country down the middle. I've decided to be neutral about the design of the Tesla, because there's going to be people who absolutely hate it. I would say the vast majority of people will think it's a joke. A lot of people thought it was a joke when it was first revealed at the launch. And they were expecting a normal looking pickup truck to be brought out and go, no, this is the real one. No, that is the real one. We are very lucky. Our wonderful camera crew, led by Rush Nyagi, were at the event. So we're just quickly now cutting together what they saw there, because they were actually there doing a report for us. Obviously, it got a lot of attention, and it's very challenging, and I'm sure that's what it was for. And who knows what it will look like in a couple of years' time when they actually start producing them. So that is the Tesla Cybertruck. As we approach 2020, with all the electric vehicles that are being launched, basically that will arrive in 2020, they're all being launched at the moment. There's no way we can possibly keep up with it. But the transition, the speed of the transition, the development of grid storage, of renewables, of bigger and bigger wind turbines, they're testing out 20 megawatt wind turbine nacelles, the big box that goes on the top of the tower to go offshore wind. 20 megawatts. It's unimaginable. When you first saw wind turbines 20, 30 years ago, they were like 500 kilowatts. They were like half a megawatt. They're now 20 megawatts, going to be the next generation of wind turbines. They're testing them out in Denmark at the moment. That isn't one of the news stories I was going to do. I just remembered it because it's amazing. I mean, there's plenty of fresh and amazing news, and there's, of course, the constant torrent of negative nonsense that's being pumped out by an increasingly, I would suggest, panicking fossil fuel industry and the lobbyists that work for them. One of the great stories that I really just want to mention out, because I want to do a whole episode debunking all the FUD, fear, uncertainty and doubt. It's pointless, but I quite enjoy doing it, because people read these stories in the popular press and they just take it as read. We can't recycle batteries, we're just going to have to throw them into landfill. People are still saying that now. As if. Cobalt is forcing children to dig out cobalt. Here's an interesting point, and one that I didn't know about until recently, and I feel ashamed that I didn't know about this. Where's one of the most common uses of cobalt in the industrial world? Well, one of them is to make high-grade stainless steel. A lot of cobalt is used in that process, which I did know about. It's in refining fossil fuel. So we decided many years ago that we needed to get rid of sulfur, particularly in diesel and in petrol. Sulfur was not only bad for human beings, it was very bad for the environment. It was a toxic chemical that was coming out of the back. So we wanted to reduce the sulfur, low sulfur fuels. We've all heard of them. This new petrol is low sulfur, really good thing. How do you get rid of the sulfur in petrol or diesel, in gasoline or diesel? How do you get rid of it? You use cobalt once. You can only use it once. They use tons of cobalt in petrol refining, as well as terawatts of electricity. These little facts are never released by the fossil fuel industry. They use more cobalt refining petrol than any electric car, or even our phones, our laptops, our tablets. They all have a lot of cobalt in them, much more in personal electronics than in cars. But the majority of it is used by the fossil fuel industry. That is the sort of FUD that I want to attack. Remember that when the next person says to you, oh, your electric car is full of cobalt, not as much as your petrol car. And what happens to that cobalt? It's left in the petrol, it's burnt in the engine, and the residue comes out of the tailpipe, which is breathed in by children, just children. I was on it, you just always go for children and hard-working families. That's who has to breathe in the toxic filth that comes out of an exhaust pipe when it burns low sulfur, clean diesel. Sorry, I didn't mean to start off with a rant. I'm not going to do any more. Well, there's a little rant coming up. But now, some good news, or some interesting news. Don't know if it's good, it's interesting. Now, Tesla, the electric vehicle behemoth, well, they've just opened a factory, a Gigafactory 3, I think it is, in China, just outside Shanghai, and it took them from an empty field and planning permission. I don't know what planning permission is like in China, but they had planning consent to do it. It took 168 days for it to be a fully functioning factory. That's about 6 months. So it went from an empty field to a functioning factory that's producing batteries and soon to be producing electric cars in 6 months. Apparently, even Chinese spokesman said, even by Chinese standards, that is very fast. So that is now already producing huge amounts of batteries and battery packs and drive systems, and very soon the Model Y apparently is one of the things. The Model 3 and the Model Y are going to be manufactured in China. Well then, I've heard this for a long time. Tesla are looking around a European country to put in a Gigafactory 4, if you like. And certainly the UK was on the list. Tesla have decided to build the Gigafactory 4 or 5 or whatever it is in Germany, which I'm not surprised, kind of not surprised. Obviously, a massive manufacturing base in Germany. There'll be a lot of support for it. I'm sure there'll be some resistance, I would imagine, from the existing motor manufacturers there. They'll be a bit moody about it, but clearly it's, it's going to be a going concern very quickly. It absolutely depends which particular part of the popular press you read as to whether this is because of Brexit or has nothing to do with Brexit. It depends who you want to agree with. I think it's only fair to say Elon Musk was quoted during an interview as saying Brexit uncertainty made it too risky to put a gigafactory in the UK. So that's from him. But what does he know? What does he know? Nothing. He's just an elitist who knows nothing. Whatever the reason, there'll soon be a big factory outside Berlin in Germany producing tons of batteries, employing thousands of people, and also producing the Tesla Model Y. So there's that, and then there's the recent launch of the Ford Mustang Mach-E. Now, I went to a Ford event, I think early this year or late last year in Amsterdam, where they were talking about they were going to electrify anything, and then they showed us lots of hybrids, mild hybrids and plug-in hybrids, and one pure electric transit van. But they were talking about all the way through a Mustang-inspired pure electric car. And I have to say, the first glimpses I've seen of this car, it didn't immediately remind me of the classic 1960s Ford Mustang. I actually drove one many years ago, 2001, in Los Angeles, and it was fabulous. It was a fabulous experience of that kind of American muscle car. The noises it made, and the gearbox was just phenomenal, quite stiff, and it brilliant in a straight line. Corners, really didn't like corners. It just wanted to go straight. But amazing car, and I gotta say, I can't really see a stylistic connection between what is essentially an SUV, which is what Ford had produced, and the old Mustang. But it would be silly to just make a Mustang like it was in the 1960s. So this is a modern car The great thing about it is it's not a compliance car. It is going to be mass-produced. It's their first electric offering, 100% electric. This is one of the biggest manufacturers in the world. It comes in a range of models, the Select, the Premium, the First Edition, the California Route 1. You've got to have that on the back of your Mustang-inspired electric vehicle, the California Route 1. And then there's a GT and a GT Performance Edition. So those are all the different types. Basically the same car, but with different configurations, different power outputs. There are two battery sizes available. There's the standard range, which is 75.7 kilowatt hours, and the extended range, which is 98.8 kilowatt hours. Basically a 100 kilowatt hour battery for the extended range. So no one really knows what sort of distance you can do in these cars. They've only literally just launched them in the last few days. But you're looking at about 230 miles for the standard range, and I would say, 275 to 300 for the extended range. Depends on how you drive it, on what the time of year is, if it's hilly, if it's windy, if it's raining. All those things affect your energy usage, just as they do in a fossil burning car. They're no different. The cost, which is quite interesting, the Select trim level, so that's the basic one, is $44,000, which is roughly £34,000. So this is, quite a high-end car, but it's not like ridiculously expensive. It's not like 60,000 quid or 100,000 pounds. It's 34,000. So that is a very reasonable price. Obviously it goes up to $60,000, $70,000 for the performance ones. What is great is, one, it's mass produced. Two, it's made by a really well-known car company. It is an SUV. That's a very popular style of car. There's a lot of electric SUVs coming out. All the big manufacturers seem to be making them. And talking of SUVs, they are incredibly popular. I'm not talking about the wide range of electric SUVs are now on the market. I'm talking, the Tesla Model X, the Audi e-tron, the Jaguar I-Pace, the Mercedes EQC, and very soon the Volvo XC40. And there's going to be more. Now there's the Mustang. There's going to be more and more. There's the Neo SUVs. There are a lot of them. Very common design and style of car. So there's plenty to choose from. So if you are in the market for an SUV now, for instance, this year, 2019, 2020, you've got a really big choice of electric cars that are roughly on a par. They're only marginally more expensive than the big SUVs that are very, very popular, the petrol and diesel ones that are selling by the hundreds of thousands. And there's people driving brand new petrol and diesel SUVs that they're buying this year. The last 18 months, sales have gone off the scale, and here's the result of that. The enormous reduction in fuel use as a result of hundreds of thousands of electric vehicles, both in North America and in Europe, but particularly in Europe and particularly in the UK, that reduction in fossil fuel burning has been completely and utterly negated by the massive rise in SUVs. So if you drive a small petrol or diesel hatchback car, it doesn't use much fuel. It's a really efficient modern engine. If you're buying a new one of those cars are amazing. I'm not arguing with that. I just don't think we should be burning fossil fuel at all. But if we're going to, use it in a small car that's aerodynamic and it's efficient and it uses less fuel. But no, hundreds and hundreds of wealthy, middle-class people who've got jobs, who can afford electric cars, who very likely have somewhere off the street to park those cars, are choosing instead to buy a big, fat, lazy, stupid, blinkered petrol or diesel SUV. They are incredibly popular. And so our fuel use has gone up. Our CO2 output in this country has gone up in the last 2 years, and it's entirely down to SUVs, which are being pushed like manic, crazed drug dealers by the car manufacturers, the same people who make electric cars. How much do they spend producing and promoting electric cars? For every penny they spend on that, they are spending £100,000 or dollars or euros pushing and pushing and pushing with big adverts, with a guy driving confidently in his massive SUV, always along an empty country road with no one else around. Like no one does. Everyone sits in a traffic jam in their massive SUV with the engine running, going with that toxic, poisonous filth coming out the back. And people don't think about it because we're all lazy, selfish and stupid. But every now and then, it's worth trying to encourage people to have a little thought about what their decisions are doing to the rest of the mammals that live on this planet. As I've said before, the planet is fine. The planet is happy as Larry. It doesn't care. But the mammals that live on it, especially us, the human beings, are going to suffer as a result of this incredible, blinkered, short-sighted stupidity. So if you've got a mate or a pal or a friend or a relative who's saying, oh, we're thinking of buying the new VW Touareg or the Porsche Cayenne or the Range Rover or the Discovery. We're talking middle-class people who can afford to buy new cars. And they're still, today, buying these wretched, monstrous, stupid, idiotic vehicles by the tens of thousands. And so I'm just doing this rant to try and spread the idea that it's not a good idea. They are not good cars. They are rubbish. They're also a really stupid investment. They're going to lose their value incredibly quickly. You can't drive one of those big fat things into London in 3 or 4 years' time. You won't be allowed. Stupid. The value is going to fall off a cliff. If you buy an electric one, the value will go up. Anyway, I'm sorry, that's too much ranting for one episode. I know some people love a rant and other people are going to get really upset and go, you can't be political. Enough of all that. We've got some really exciting episodes coming up. We're coming out before Christmas and early next year. Some really good stuff. I'm not going to go on about it now. And of course, our live events that are taking place both in the United States and in the United Kingdom next year. A lot of news about that coming up very soon. And next year will be the 10th birthday of Fully Charged. It will be going 10 years. So I might get a little bit philosophical. I might even get a bit teary about the last 10 years, about how I saw the world then and how much it's changed. I mean, it's staggering the amount of change that's happened, particularly in the last 5 years. It's really ramped up the changing, not just with cars or with transportation, but with public attitudes to it, with public attitudes to climate change, to renewable energy, to energy storage. That's the really big thing that I would never have seen coming 10 years ago. So many big challenges, big, really difficult things that we've got to deal with in the next 10 years, but it's also really exciting. There are amazing opportunities as well as massive, massive, ugly problems, which is kind of what human beings have been doing for about the last 1,000 years, is dealing with stuff like that. So it's all normal. So there's a lot of organic, ethically pure goodness coming your way. I just specifically want to thank some of our amazing Patreon supporters who donate $10 a month or more to keep this show going. It is amazing that you do it, and we really, really appreciate it. So I really want to say a big thank you to Kunamaya Klaus Otto, Anthony Woolhouse, Mario Rossi, Morgan Wright, Inigo Smith, John Moores, Jason Palmer, Ken Hester Jr., and Carla Balter. Thank you so much for your support. It's really hugely appreciated. Please do, normal stuff. I'll do it as quickly as I can. Please subscribe to Fully Charged on YouTube. Please do have a look at the Patreon link is beneath this thing. And as always, if you have been, thank you for watching.